What's up, Rockstars, and welcome to my full review of Avalon the Riven Veil. I have the full prototype, been able to play the game, and I'm going to tell you about my experience, about what I like and what I dislike, what I think could maybe do a little bit of improvement. Obviously, at time of recording, this is a prototype, and it's on Kickstarter right now, so there's a link down in the description below, of course, and of course, things can change during the development and the campaign itself. I'm sure there's going to be tons of stretch goals, there'll be all sorts of different features and stuff that I don't have here. In fact, some of the rules include things like upgrading settlements. I'm not going to get into the stuff I didn't do, and instead just review what I have here, so stay tuned for that. All right, as I said, there are some links down in the description below. There's, of course, a like button. There's, of course, a subscribe button. There's a join button for the YouTube membership. There is a link to my Patreon. There's a link to the campaign for Avalon the Riven Veil by Shadowborn Games. There is a link to this chair, which is fantastic, by the way. Very comfortable. I like how low it sits, so I can just really kind of be here at the game table. Very, very nice. Kept me fully comfortable. I'm really happy with it. There's a lot, so feel free to check the links down in the description below, of course. But yeah, this has definitely been a really, really cool game. I'm gonna get that out of the way right now. This game is just cool. I think part of the cool factor has to do with just how beautiful of a game it is. Just looking at the game box art, just that logo right there reminds me a lot of Final Fantasy, because Final Fantasy, their logo, they often have this like kind of beautiful kind of faint art behind the Final Fantasy itself, the actual name of it, and then with the dragon in the back and the swoosh there, it reminds me a lot of that. But then if you look at the actual game components themselves, right, whether it's the cards that have kind of like this two-tone kind of color scheme here, or just a beautiful like layout of Avalon to the faction cards, just everything looks really, really pretty. Now, obviously, again, this is prototype, so everything can get a little touched up. The board is not quite spaced perfectly on this, for instance. The miniatures are maybe a little too dark, don't have enough contrast between the two different plastics, right? So everything can get touched up, right? This is still a prototype, but even as a prototype, this is one of the best looking games I own. It is just pretty. It's great to look at. It's great to interact with. And when it comes to buying these physical board games that cost money, as often quite a bit of it, I want it to look really, really good. I want to have a pleasure interacting with it, and I did, even with this prototype. A lot of fun. Really, really good. Now, that kind of goes to the miniatures as well. And the miniatures are pretty standout. Again, I'm not going to comment too much on the actual, like, crispness of detail or anything like that, because obviously that will change. These are not final production plastic minis, but I do like the two-tone. Like, this is going to look great when they finally have the final plastic and everything like that. It'll look really cool. Each one of them have that, right? There's some here and stuff too. And you'll see that obviously in the campaign page as well. They look really good. They're a good scale. They fit on the board really well. The detail level is really good. Even I try to think of them painted as well. Obviously, with the different colors, it's easy to tell them apart. But even if they weren't and they were painted, so they were a mixed color, obviously you should probably keep the bases the color. But either way, they'd still look very different, and I really appreciate that. The like Mythic Beasts that you can get look super cool. Like, they are really, really nice. I like them a lot. It felt really good to get them just because they're a little bit larger than everybody else, right? And they're really, really cool, right? There's nothing else to it. They're nice minis. They're super neat. I really enjoy them. All right, so the Mythic Beasts are really cool to get, and they're really fun. How you get them, if you didn't know, this is a dudes on a map game, and you're moving around and you're playing all these different cards. I'm going to talk about various specific mechanics, but if you want an overview of the game, I'm sure they have that over on the campaign page. So just follow the link in the description below. It'll tell you all about it, I am sure. So I'm not going to like worry too much about that, because if you do know how to play the game, you're just going to skip that part anyway. And so I'm just reviewing the game itself, but I'll talk about specific mechanics. One of them is getting the cards. So when you reveal a card, right? When you explore and you reveal the card, sometimes it's an artifact, sometimes it's a Mythic Beast. Both feel great to get, the Mythic Beast in particular, because you put them there on the area before you even get it. It's like it's there, it's sitting there, and you're like, that could be mine. And I really, really enjoy that. I think that's awesome. Like I said, they're larger, they're like as big as your lord, they have all these special stuff, they have all, an ability, and they're really powerful, and they can, come with victory points. So they're very cool. They're very cool. I did have a little bit of an issue, and I'm not sure exactly how to solve this. So, if you didn't know, let's say right now I have it set up for a 2-player game, plus some extras. So this is like everything. We'll get into table space in a moment, but let's say this is 4 players, right? So there's 4 players, and I reveal this area. There's people over there, there's people over there. It's just new. I just lined on this. There's a Mythic Beast. Now, some people may not even be deployed on the board yet. It could be I'm the first person to do that. And yet, everybody gets to now essentially try and hunt for the Mythic Beast and can get it. So I might not get the Mythic Beast there, and I'm okay losing a Mythic Beast. I think I'm saying that wrong half the time I say it, but I'm fine losing it. My issue is more about, I don't know, it doesn't quite fit the narrative in my head a little bit, that some people haven't even arrived in Avalon yet, but then they can like get that, or maybe they're way over there, there's nobody there but me, or maybe 2 other people but a 3rd person. I would prefer it if only people that were adjacent to it maybe could get it, and then they'd have to even move a unit in there, so it's like, hey, we moved in, we heard the roar and came looking and whatever, and we're able to like find it or something like that. That would make a little bit more sense to me. That being said, it does kind of limit it to where then you could just auto get it, and that may swing some things a little bit. And if you do lose it, so it's there, now suddenly an enemy has a unit there that's really powerful, right? But then if they had to move units there too, they get a free movement into there, though it would also make them decide, do I want to move units from the adjacent area into that to be able to get it if I'm not already there? I don't know. It's in my head. I don't like the idea of anybody being able to get the Mythic Beast, even if it's not even close to them or they're not even on the board yet. To me, that breaks the narrative a little bit, though I can understand if it needs to be there for gameplay. It's not a deal breaker. This is a nitpick, right? But at the same time, I don't know. It just seems kind of weird. That's like, hey, I'm the only person here, and now somebody else has it. You could maybe say that they got it beforehand. I just discovered that they're there. I don't know. It just a little iffy, a little nitpicky, but there you go. Okay, let's talk about 2 things. This is both a positive, a very big positive, and a mild, not necessarily a negative, but just a note when it comes to at least my perceived value of the game. So you have 2 different versions of your board, right? Let's take the undead with Mordred here. So this is your basic one, and then this is your advanced one, right? So how this works is if you're playing this, everybody's symmetrical. Everybody has the exact same, I'm upside down. Everybody has the exact same settlements. Everybody has the same powers, right? This is the only thing that's not symmetrical. You do have a unique power to your lord that is just yours, but otherwise it is completely symmetrical. Everybody is the same. And that's how they say to start with. I will say if you you've played if you have a wall like this of board games, if you've played a lot of board games, you'll be able to be just fine skipping that and playing with the more advanced version. The more advanced version, it comes with a unique ability, maybe even an objective that you have to do, unique abilities here, extra stuff here. It's much more unique to it, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment. But I will say that I will never play the standard version again, just ever. I probably won't teach it. I'm typically not teaching this games to anybody that's super new. And if they are super new, I'm not sure I'd even play this game with them. I'm not sure this is exactly a great intro to board gaming. It depends on the person. If the person can catch on to things really good, obviously they are, but some people don't, and they really struggle with the rules and stuff. And here the rules aren't very bad, but they are nuanced even in the standard mode. So it's not necessarily, to me, an introductory game. And with that, I'm not sure I need an introductory version. I actually wish I had just started out playing that because, like I said, it was good. It was good. I didn't mind my session playing the standard version, but like I said, I won't ever do that again. Even when bringing somebody on board, I'll be playing with somebody that's at least played a other board game along the style of these kind of games, in which case I'll be fine. And if not, again, if I think they can handle it, then they can handle it, and I think it'll be okay. So to me, that's not useful, I guess, and in fact, almost a detriment. Because, like I said, I kind of wish I hadn't. But for anybody who does appreciate it, I'm glad it's there. This is why it's not necessarily like a huge negative. It's just, to me, it was kind of I wish I had just played the like real version in my eyes, because it's so much better. So let's talk about that. These faction powers are super cool and very unique. It is not every day that you get a dudes on a map game like this where the factions act very, very differently. I was worried because you get these cards, and we'll talk about the cards in a moment. But you get these cards, but everyone's drawing from the same pool of cards. So the cards do not give you unique powers in the sense that, oh, I'm acting in a totally different way through my cards than somebody else. You will use that card the exact same way they will use that card for the most part. It can interact with a few of the things you're doing here, like with deployments and stuff like that. But your faction abilities and what you can do is very, very different. So I'm going to explain two for you. And by the way, if you haven't checked the campaign page, this is news for you. There are at least 4 factions here. So you've seen the Knights of the Round, you've seen the Undead. What you haven't seen is the Fish People, I forget their name, the Thermians or whatever junk that is, and the Druids led by Merlin. So those are the other 2 factions. Now that the campaign's live, I can finally talk about them. They're super cool. That being said, I'm just going to briefly mention the Thermians, but I'm going to mention these 2 in particular. So over here, you have the Druids. And the Druids are really cool because, first of all, they're led by Merlin, who actually looks awesome. So there's that, right? But they only get 1 settlement, so they only have the 1 settlement, but then they get these ley lines that they can play down that kind of act as settlements. And in fact, as they do that, I'm going to detach this a little bit. As they do that, they add them and then they unlock other abilities that they can use. And these other abilities allow you to do stuff with the ley lines like their settlements. So you pretty much have settlements everywhere. But one of the cool things you can do is interact with the settlement that you won. The 1 settlement, anything adjacent to it, you can do stuff with, which is super cool. Or if you actually are able to get your objective, you actually replace your settlement token with this giant beetle that is now a mythic unit mobile settlement. So suddenly, that's our settlement, and it can move around and act just like it. Plus doing that, it's super cool. It is really neat. And so you're moving around with your like ancient one over here. Coming back to the undead over here, they actually get these like bone altars. So they actually get 6 total, and at the end of a battle, they actually are able to lay them down. So they're able to lay down settlements also much easier, but in a different way, more through battle. And then of course they can do stuff like raise the undead around there and do all that kind of stuff. So and then of course, like Mordred over here is just a boss. So once you get your objective there, once you're able to actually kind of level him up and he becomes this a Lord of Death, he can actually go from battle to battle to battle. He can move around and fight multiple times, which is just crazy. So here you have a very mobile hero, or very mobile lord or leader, and here you have a very mobile settlement. And here you have 1 settlement plus all these ley lines, and then your settlement can move around. And here you have a whole bunch of these settlements, and you can actually spawn multiple people to there based off that, and you can have a whole bunch of them. So that's just an example. The Fish People can even do like a tidal wave that just moves people around. It's really cool. There's a lot of different nuance to the factions. They each feel very different. They look very different in all the abilities that they get, and you're going to be doing unique things, right? There's only one that has a base that's freaking moving around, right? There's only one where the Lord's moving around everywhere, or one that says wiping areas on. So stuff like that is really cool, and I really appreciate that, and it adds that kind of uniqueness to the different factions. Oh my gosh, forgot the guy. They also have a lot of guys too. They have more guys than anybody else. Any of the other factions they have more of, because they get to spawn a whole bunch. So yeah. Anyway, very, very cool. Very much enjoyed the various factions. Definitely, in my opinion, the way to play and one of the big differentiators for this game versus some of the others in this genre is just these factions and how they interact. They're super cool. Okay, so let's talk about card choices. So the card choices are really nice. Every single card that you can pick is very powerful. They all sound great except for one exception. Like literally, I look at like a whole thing of cards and it's like, oh, that'd be really good. Oh, that'd be really good. Oh, that'd be really good. Oh, like everything just seems really, really good, right? The one kind of odd nuance to that is these red cards, the war cards. These you do at the end, so otherwise you're mainly playing with these, maybe paying with these or keeping them for later. So either way, you're moving, you're deploying, and you are building up settlements, and sometimes a mix of several of them. Now, each of these is really powerful. They all seem cool. As far as I can tell, I don't think there are actually any that are exactly the same. Some are quite close to each other, but in slightly different ways. Either way, you're doing stuff that kind of you're just doing that seems really powerful every single time, and you're happy with your turn pretty much every single time. So that's really cool. That can lead to some AP, right? So if you are somebody who just, like struggles, or you have somebody in your group that just struggles to make a decision, there's a lot of decision making here because it's not just your cards, which you can have quite a few of. And if you notice, each one has text and symbols, so each one's doing unique things. So you can do that, but you can also pair it with your abilities that you're using. Like I said, you have all these abilities that you can pay with your faction power with and do different things there. Or maybe your mythic units have abilities, or your lord has an ability, or your artifacts have abilities, or there's all these different things you can do, right? So plus there's standard actions you can also take. So when it comes to your turn, you can do umpteen things, and that umpteen is actually quite large. You typically have quite a bit of options on what you can do, and even then, how you implement it. So you might decide to do that, but it's, do you move units here and then move units here? Or do you move units here? So you can sit there and just really start thinking about it. Now, at lower player counts, that can also mean that there is, calm down, a little bit of a delay, because you're drawing cards at the end of your turn, at least, maybe even during. And so sometimes it's, you know, oh, I got to draw cards and do that, and I want to see what you're doing, so you have to wait while I do all this stuff. And then you got new cards, but you want to watch them, so maybe you haven't even read your cards yet, and then you still have to read your cards to see what they do, because each one's different. So there's a lot of reading the card and then making a decision. And then, of course, once the other player does their turn, or turns, depending on how many players, then you have to reassess the situation entirely again, and what you're going to do maybe isn't going to be a thing anymore. So it can lead to a little bit of that does, I think, add to the length of the game. Now, for me, it still is fine, but it can extend a little longer than maybe some that are really snappy. Even though this is limited to 3 seasons, if you even play a short game at 2 seasons, it can still take a fair bit of time, especially as people are kind of making decisions, right? Now, one of the things I really struggle with when it comes to dudes on a map games, when it comes to this kind of area control stuff where I'm trying to decide, oh, do I move or do I recruit, or do I do this or do I do that, is having the options to do what I want to do. So I'll have a plan, and often these are limiting my actions, right? Because I'm only limited to what I have. If I do not have movement cards, I cannot move. That is not an option for me. This fixes this in several ways, with a little bit of an exception. So one of the things it allows you to do is you get to pick what you draw. So you can, if you want to move next turn, you can pick 2 movement cards in your turn. You have movement cards. Now you can move. Guaranteed you can move. Additionally, there are basic actions you can do where you just discard a few things to move. There's always that option. Even if you find yourself with nothing but war cards in the preparation phase, you can still use those cards, right? Like, you can still do what you need to do. You have those standard actions. Plus, all of these faction powers allow you to move around and do stuff like that. So between all the different abilities and all that kind of stuff, you have the options to do what you want, even if it's not exactly what you want. And so it's more, I can't do everything I want to do, because you want to do everything, obviously, and you're limited by essentially 3 rounds per season. So just 3 different actions, or at least 3 different sets of actions from the cards, plus your abilities that you can do on top of that. So overall, you have quite a bit of options, which is kind of nice. The one limiting thing to that is these blue cards. So these blue cards are your settlement cards, and more often than not, they are slightly limiting. So you may want to add a faction, but for instance, if you have this one, you're adding one only on these 3 areas here. It's per zone, right? So you might have one where this is a Western keep. There's an Eastern one as well. So maybe only there. But if you're not over there, you ain't building a settlement, right? Now you can do the basic, discard 3 cards for settlement, but that's kind of a garbage turn. Like, yeah, you can get your settlement, but paying 3 for 1 settlement in your area and no other benefits is pretty much worse than any other card you could naturally do there. So it's almost the opposite of the deploy. On a lot of the green cards, they allow you to deploy to even any revealed region. And some settlements do allow that, where you can deploy kind of anywhere, but a lot of them, you always have to have the person there, or even if you have the person there, you can only deploy it on a zone you're not even in, or not even going to go into. So at that point, that's just a cost card. That's a card you literally kind of can't use sometimes. And it's just an exception because every other one's like that. I get that settlements can, be quite impactful, especially if played early on, just because you recruit their costs over each round. But in a whole group of cards that are super useful, these are super useful sometimes. So just something to note there. Okay, now this is a tough one. This is a tough one because it's so good and I love it and I hate it. Seriously, this is a positive. Choosing cards to give up hurts. It hurts because, like I said, all of these cards, except for that garbage settlement card that you're never going to even play this round, you know you're not going to because you can't. So if you have one of those, boom, you got a card to discard. But at the let's do this one. So at the side of all of them, they have hey, this is what you're discarding, right? So you have to essentially get rid of cards to pay for your other cards, which means limiting your actions, limiting your options, limiting what you can do. At the end of each round, any cards you have left over are victory points. You're literally giving up victory points. No matter what you do, you are at a loss paying for each card, and every card you do has to do that. So it definitely hurts. Oh, this is a great card, but getting rid of 3 different ones, 3 cards for that. I don't know. And then you combine that with the initiative and when you're going to be able to do it and whether that's good or bad. There's so much to take in, but I really, really enjoyed having to give up cards to pay for the other one. It just feels so impactful, I guess is the right word. Because like I said, it hurts because you're literally losing options, you're losing victory points, you're losing possibility. But at the same time, you're gaining that really cool card and having to make that decision on I'm not going to do this, I never will because it's going away, I'm losing it, is really good. I enjoyed that a lot. I really did. I also really enjoy the reset feature of this. So at the end of each season, you take all of the stuff off, minus your settlements essentially, and then it gets jumbled about and there's different areas and everybody restarts again. So you don't get into this section or this point where like you feel like you're at a loss. Like, oh, like everybody's taking over my home turf, so I can't even hard to deploy anymore. They're pretty much, base camping now. Or everybody has all this wall, and so I'm stuck in this little corner here and I can't get past it without battling my way out of there or something like that. There's none of that whole like, oh, I have to pull out. Everybody's out. And then everybody comes back in, and then everybody's out, and I really enjoy that. I think that's super cool. Very big point of why I enjoyed this because it is kind of foolproof in that sense. There are some catch-up mechanics, and those can be either pretty heavy or pretty light. I'm more or less okay with this. There are definitely times where if you are losing and you're losing by a lot, you kind of check out. So being able to catch up is nice. At the same time, if you're not playing well, you shouldn't win, right? And so there's always that balance there. I thought the catch-up mechanics here were pretty good. Some of them, if you wanted to, could be a little bit ignored, but a lot of them are fairly ingrained in there when it comes to like breaking ties and stuff like that, right? So, and in fact, even the whole like favor system, but again, you could kind of ignore that a little bit if you wanted to, but I was fine with them. They didn't really make or break anything, and they more or less, except for a big exception here that I'm going to get to, which is one of my big problems with just this entire genre. I love this genre, but there's one part that they all seem to do half the time, and I don't like it every time it happens. But either way, the catch-up mechanics often pretty good. Okay, let's get some nitpicky stuff out of the way. The prophecies are neat when they matter. Sometimes they don't matter too much and nobody does any of them, and that's fine too, I guess, except it's kind of I don't know. Ideally, if there's a mechanic in the game, in my opinion, the games that I like, if there's a mechanic in the game, I like it to be in effect during the game all the time. If it's not all the time, if it's only a sometimes thing, I start to wonder how, if either the mechanic needs to get buffed up a little bit to where it is a thing all the time, or to where, like, if it's not, then getting rid of it. And I don't know where I fall in I like the prophecy idea. It's just another thing to go to. Maybe if it was a little bit stronger, perhaps. And I'm not saying they're not strong. It's just sometimes it's kind of hard to do them. And so sometimes it's just like, I'd have to go out of my way to do that and I'd screw over everything else. And the prophecy ain't going to beat, an 11 point with a 6 point artifact on it. Like, that's just a ton of victory points. I'm going for that. The 5 victory points I get from there and the 2 favor, I'm good. I'm not going to worry about that and worry about that. So some of it's just diminishing returns. Like, if it happens, it's nice. But I never saw it to where, like, you were super pursuing that over something else. It was always, if I get it, that's fine, but otherwise, I'm not worried about it. So it was kind of, I guess, underutilized in our games. All right. This is actually towards the end of a 2-player session I did, and yeah, as you can see, it gets kind of cramped, which is kind of nice, and I like that. This is what you want the game to feel. You want it to feel like you can have your own little space, but also at the same time, anybody can come from anywhere, and there's always fights going on, and there's people in all the different areas, and lots of battles happening, and all that kind of fun stuff. So I like it. I think it's perfectly sized. The size of it does change depending on how many units or how many people are playing, right? 2, 3, and 4. And so that's kind of nice too, and it works out fairly well. The cards, you don't have to take out any cards, so there are no, like, at least I didn't see any northern cards. They're like, oh, only on the northern side. Well, the northern whole section's gone. I think that's purposeful, so I think it was smartly done. So it scales well, it's a good size. You get a lot of units on there, you have a lot of fights, you have a lot of fun, you're interacting all the time, you're not just off doing your own little thing. That's not what this kind of genre is about, and that's not what they're doing here. Now, additionally, it doesn't take up too much table space. I know I said I could loop back to that, so here we are. I like it. I like it. It is a round board. Some people like it, some people don't. I never once had a problem reading it if it was upside down, if it was sideways, or if it was right side up. Honestly, it was very easy. A lot of it is because it's not really very text-based. It's mostly symbols, and those symbols you can tell upwards, backwards, whatever. Like, it's totally fine. Literally, I never had an issue with that. The swirls favor, and I can see it there, whether it's right side up or upside down or whatever. The only kind of oddity I ever had once is this one actually right here. When we were playing this at the very end, there was a 6 and a 9, and they're literally inverted to me. So the 6 looks like a 9 and the 9 looks like a 6. So adding a line on that might be helpful, or otherwise just don't place them, I guess, directly next to each other. Though even then you can't always guess, because sometimes it actually is like, it actually lowers in value in like the second round and then ups in value again. So it can't just be like if it's a lower number, that means it's always, the first number or something like that. Because not necessarily. Either way, 6 and 9 flipped. That was the only time this has ever happened. Otherwise, literally nothing, no issue at all. No issue at all. And yeah, this is literally like every component from the freaking prototype. Now, obviously, the full game's going to be more. Again, link down in the description below. Check that out. See how the campaign's doing. But yeah, I could easily move these units on there, move these units on there, still have fun. I don't even have any trays on my game table. This is a smaller game table. It's their medium, the Megan medium from Geek and Son, and if it's totally fine. I don't have an issue with it. It's a little cramped if you get the other 2 faction boards on there, but it's honestly not too bad. It does add a little bit when you're adding mythical units and artifacts and stuff like that, but overall, again, totally fine. Didn't have an issue. And yeah, the fact that it fits in the well pretty much, not too bad. Not too bad. Okay, we're going to get to my I guess my biggest negative, and it's not even necessarily this game specifically. And then we're going to get to my biggest positive. So my biggest negative for Avalon the Riven Veil, and really the area control board games like this in general, is the ramping of points, right? So in the first one, you might get 7 points here and 12 points here and whatever, right? And so you might, by the end of round 1, you might be here, right? Who knows, right? If you did pretty good, maybe you're even right there. But because all the points kind of ramp up, right? Like at this point, you're getting 20 for the middle, right? So it does make it to where you have these wild swings at the end, where you can play really well and be the best player on top round 1 and round 2, but if somebody does really good round 3 and you're not, they're just gonna leapfrog you. It doesn't matter. The third round is kind of what matters. That's how I feel when I play these games, and I've seen it in several. It's just this genre in general kind of does this. So it's not even like me saying Avalon the Riven Veil isn't good because there's wild swings at the end, because I could say that about literally pretty much every kind of dudes on a map area control game that I have played. So yeah, I just it can be kind of frustrating if it comes in clutch and there's now I like these kind of moments, but when it comes to a competitive game, when it comes to playing against other people, if you're there to have fun, that's great. If you're there to be like super chunky serious, then this can be a little random, right? So for instance, I'll talk about this, right? You play one of these cards, right? One of these war cards. So you might have a set strength, and they might have a set strength, and maybe there's a third player there, whatever, right? And then you lay this down. Okay, now I can get up to 10, right? Now, by chance of drawing cards, this is random, right? It's a push your luck thing. I could just happen to go over it. I could happen to get exactly 10 and maximize it, or I could get too low and then not want to do it. So now I got 8 instead of 10. So I could get 5 if I went over. I could get 10, did great. I could get 8, probably not worth risking for a 1 or a 2 when it can go up to like 5, right? So there's a huge difference between 5 to 10, right? That's 5 strength, which is a big variance. And that variance, if that really happens and you if you happen to go over, or you're not willing to, maybe you're only 3 off, do you risk it on 1, 2, or 3? Maybe not. That kind of risk either makes or breaks it. And at the final one, it can be 20, 25, maybe even 30 points for that one battle. If that happens twice, you've now lost the game. Like if you happen to, and so in a way, this gives me a lot of options. There's a lot of ways to get cards, but when it comes to the battle, this is fun, this is exciting, but it also does add a lot of swing, especially on the third one, and often you can feel that. You'll get these clutch ones, you're like, I gotta win this, but you cannot guarantee that win. Like, you just can't, because you don't know what cards you're going to draw. And if you go over, you're just hosed, right? And so, like, that kind of sucks. And with the swinginess and with the slight addition to a little bit more randomness than some others in this scenario, it just... It can feel a little icky. It can feel a little icky to see somebody go from last to first, for instance. I've seen that happen before in this game, where they were literally like a fairly decent point-wise gone, but then they went last in the initiative order, which is super powerful, because if nobody's in an area, you can just move into that area, guaranteed win, you get those points, right? So you can kind of guarantee yourself points that way. If there's 2 different areas and you have an option to just move at the end, that's probably worth it just to get the 2 different areas for freebies, because nobody else can really do too much. There's a possibility some of the red cards allow you to move people in, but it's probably not enough. Even still, if you move enough people in, you can definitely do that, especially if there's already a contested area. If you go from a contested area to 2 other locations that you can pretty much guarantee win, golden. That's freaking awesome. That's great. That's a winning move right there, because again, you just guaranteed yourself in that one move, like, X amount of points. And if it's the third round, you could easily gain 20, 30 points, something like that. So again, part of it's a genre. I know I'm on this a little bit. The biggest negative, and it's my biggest negative in every one of these games I've played, that doesn't mean it's a bad game. It doesn't mean I don't like it. It just, I wish there wasn't as much swinginess at the end, and instead the game was kind of consistently, if you played well consistently, it was good, and not just if you're able to get a few clutch things or play really well the last round, the other 2 kind of don't matter as much. It can be kind of a bummer. Now, move on to the best thing. The best thing about Avalon the Riven Veil, and this sounds stupid, but I also want you to realize how important this is. Everybody had fun. Everybody had a blast. People were laughing. People were shouting. We had a good time. At the end of the day, that's what I want a board game to do. I want a board game to be great. I want it to feel great. I want it to play smoothly. And I want to have fun with friends and family. This game checks that box. Seriously, getting all these units is cool, and stealing it from another guy, even though you should be adjacent, whatever, it's really, really fun. It's a big, impactful thing, and it could change things. Oh my gosh, there's this monster here, and my enemy controls it. Now I got to move stuff around. The push your luck mechanic, even though it can be swingy, randomness is always kind of fun too, right? And you get the I'm gonna pull it. I got a 2, so now I'm only 1 off, and I needed a 1, 2, or 3. I wanted a 3, but a 2 still good. Okay, I think I can do this. And then you reveal, and you're like, I got it, or no, I didn't. So all those kind of things are really, really fun. Moving around stuff. The faction powers are super cool. It just fun game, had a blast. I want to play it again. And at the end of the day, especially with these prototypes, that is the biggest compliment I can give a prototype game. This game is not finalized. The rules are not finalized. It is still a work in progress. But even as it is now, I want to play this again after I'm done recording. I'm going to click stop on the camera. I'm going to edit the video. You guys are going to see this video. I still want to keep playing. And anytime I want to keep playing a prototype after my review, then that shows I really like the game, right? Because otherwise you shelve it. I did the review. I did what I was supposed to do. I let people know my thoughts on it. I'll wait for the full game. No, I don't want to wait for the full game. I want to play this right again. I want to try another faction I haven't played yet. It's super cool. I want to try and get some of the units I haven't gotten yet. That freaking Happy Tree guy. I know he's awesome. I've had a game with him. I want to play another game with him. Super cool. So overall, had a blast. Avalon the Riven Veil, beautiful game, well produced, well made, streamlined, gorgeous, fun. All of those positive things. Definitely have it. There's a few nitpicks. There's a few things that I wish were maybe slightly different, but at the end of the day, I had fun. And yeah, I guess hopefully now you can decide if you've had fun too. If you have any questions, of course, feel free to ask them in the comments below. Again, if you did appreciate this deeper dive into the game, there's that like button. Sharing the video obviously helps. Even leaving a comment saying you appreciated the time and effort I put into this. I do greatly appreciate it. Thank you. Obviously, the campaign is linked down in the description below. Guys, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. Take care. Bye, guys.